Hi. Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
I'd like you to handle this operation personally. Me?
Nice outfit.
Hold on a second. I can't make it then either. I've got a very important meeting today.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man! What are you?
I'm Batman.
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Alfred, let's go shopping.
Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker.
I feel a little drunk. And you're not anything.
Hey, one drink and I'm flying.
Wing freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and today we're talking about one of the biggest movies of my life. And we're talking about Batman '89, the movie that we just finished doing our live viewing party for. We're going to be doing all the Batman movies from the Burton and Schumacher era. And today we just finished Batman '89, which for a really long time was still considered in my top 5 movies of all time. This was my favorite movie of all time for about 3 or 4 or 5 years, up until like Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption came out, and I started changing my taste in movies. But when this movie came out in 1989, I was like 13 years old. And I was just I was just graduating 8th grade and going into my freshman year of high school. The summer of '89 was a huge summer because we had Roger Rabbit, where I got chicken pox, but Batman came out, and I remember the trailer, hopefully, that played before this. If it wasn't, it was the original OG trailer that I used to see every time I'd go to the theater, and it could not get here soon enough. This movie was so important to so much about how I would be throughout my life. It's the movie that got me to buy comics. It's the movie that I saw like 6 times. It's the movie that made me fall in love with Batman because at the time, even though I knew who Batman was and all that, I wasn't familiar with the lore. I thought that Batman looked cool, and I was the perfect age for this movie, and when it came out, it blew me away. It was like a 3-star movie, I believe. I think like Roger Ebert gave it like 3 stars when it came out, and I remember just seeing that and being like, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But all these years later, when I think about it, 3 stars is about right. Now, I love Batman '89 more than any of the current stuff. Dark Knight would be in there, but I have a problem with the Dark Knight. A part of the Dark Knight. Otherwise, I love the Dark Knight. And so, because of that one problem, Batman '89 is just better than the Dark Knight to me. And I think Batman Returns is like number 3. And the only reason it's number 3 and not number 2 is because Danny DeVito's Penguin is so fucking dark and off the mark from what I wanted the Penguin to be. And they've never really gotten him right. That it comes down because he's so unpleasant to look at and listen to and see on the screen. The Penguin is just a horrifying character in the Tim Burton universe. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Batman from 1989. And all I knew about Michael Keaton was he was a comedy actor. He was in Mr. Mom and Gung Ho, and these were all movies that I saw. He was in Beetlejuice, you know, but like in Beetlejuice, you don't really know, you can't really tell what he looks like. And then this came out, and I think Michael Keaton is the best Bruce Wayne. He's also the most fun. That's debatable, though. I think a lot of people like Bale. I think a lot of people like Affleck. And I didn't, you know, George Clooney was miscast. Val Kilmer was miscast. And Bale just, you know, needed to stop. Somebody should have told him to stop the Clint Eastwood, I'm not wearing hockey pants, you know, like thing that he was doing. Because that kind of took me out of it a little bit, too. But Michael Keaton, I think, gave us the most well-balanced Bruce Wayne. Because Michael Keaton, unless you guys don't know this already, he plays a lot of dark characters. A lot of people with some baggage. A lot of people with some stuff that's following them around. He does really good at complicated and mentally kind of tricky. Like, look at movies like The Dream Team, where he played, you know, somebody who had some serious problems. And he's played bad guys before. He's really good at playing a little bit unhinged and sometimes all the way. And so you got the good part of, you know, like a Bruce Wayne. I think anybody can pretty much be in the suit. Because half the time they're probably, you know, stunt people anyway. But Michael Keaton has always, besides Kevin Conroy, has always been my favorite Batman. Now, when we get to Jack Nicholson, Nicholson was my Joker for a really long time. And even more so than Mark Hamill for a really long time. I really liked Mark Hamill as the Joker at the time, but it was just, to me, Jack Nicholson's Joker was just the best. It wasn't until like years later that like I said, I've gotten more refined in my tastes in movies. I started to understand the movie making process more, and Nicholson's is still high up there. I think he's better than Joaquin. I think he's better than Jared Leto. I definitely think he's better than Cesar Romero. I think but he's not quite as good as Hamill, only because Hamill's had so much practice to make it his own. Nicholson had one shot, and I think that the one shot that he did was fantastic. Burton, you know, because if you have problems with the Joker character in this movie, it's not Nicholson's fault, really. It's Burton's. It's the script. It's Warner Brothers. They didn't give us completely the Joker that is from the comics. We got more of kind of an amalgamation a lot of times of what they do of different versions of a character. And in this version of the character, he's more of, like, he's Jack Napier, which later Sean Gordon Murphy would use for his character of Jack Napier in the White Knight series. And we get just enough of his backstory, which, you know, this really is a Joker origin story, and I always said that I didn't need it. But this is the first Batman, and I didn't know at the time what the Joker's origin story was. But while we get an origin for how he becomes a villain, we don't really know too much about his backstory. He's just a bad dude who thinks very highly of himself. Very much like Jack Nicholson at the time of the movies, a lot of the movies he was in. He played kind of the suave, you know, guy that's getting a little bit older, you know, getting older there, but still kind of the silver fox kind of thing. And when you see him in the trailer for the first time, like doing the wait till they get a load of me stuff, I mean, it blew everyone away. And this movie stayed at the top for weeks. I remember every time I'd look at the newspaper and say, 4 weeks in a row, Batman is #1. And it just, I mean, any chance I got, I was seeing that movie. And I know I saw it no less than 6 times at the theater. I remember I wore out the VHS tape that I got. My sister and I both received 2 tapes that year. And back then, getting a movie was a big deal, you guys. And I got Batman and she got Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And we basically wore those tapes out. But I think there might be that copy of Who Framed Roger Rabbit around here somewhere. The old copy, my original copy of Batman, I had for years until it finally wore out. And unfortunately, I never rebought it on Blu-ray because it lives up here. I can quote this movie if it's on pretty much word for word if I'm sitting there looking at it. I couldn't do it if all the way if I wasn't. But I'm telling you right now, probably like when these guys were watching the live stream with me, I probably am going to like, there's going to be a few times where I probably went off script and just started saying the movie word for word. I used to use this movie as a distraction. Again, I told you guys the story a while back of collating papers for my grandfather during the summertime. And one of the ways I would kill the time was I would just play this entire movie in my head, word for word, as I would walk around this table collating for him. That's how much I'd seen this movie. And how much I loved it. It just... After this, I mean, I was buying all the Norm Brayfogle Batman comics. I was buying Detective Comics. I was buying every comic I could get my hands on. And back then, I didn't have a lot of money. I still don't, but all my money was going towards comics. And Batman and the Punisher and Spider-Man were basically my favorite comic books back then. And then X-Men was my team book. The other parts of this movie, like the architecture and the look of this movie is fantastic. It's got this movie started out that kind of the gothic look of Gotham City, not to, throw a pun out there, but this movie, Tim Burton's look, is what affected the animated series. It kind of affected the rest of the movies. It also affected the way a lot of Tim Burton movies looked. A lot of his movies kind of looks a lot similar to these two first movies that he did for Batman. If you look at mats or models and things like that he used for cityscapes and things like that, that's all in here. The soundtrack by Danny Elfman. This was the first score I ever bought. I bought the soundtrack by Prince, which still... I love this score. I don't care. I love Prince. Not every song's a home run. This is a movie album, so there's songs literally about Batman and Joker and shit. They used to make, they still do, but back then, if you bought a soundtrack, they're like Ghostbusters 2, Bobby Brown singing about the Ghostbusters, or Ninja Turtles had people rapping about the Ninja Turtles, and in Batman, you had Prince singing every last song on that album, and it is a weird choice. At the time, even I was like, why is Prince singing all the songs? Well, mainly because Prince was Warner Brothers, and Prince was one of their fucking heavy hitters at the time. Also, the colors with Prince and the things like that kind of made sense. But it was a soundtrack that I really, really liked, and I still do. But the score by Danny Elfman, this score is what got me to get his CD that had all of his work on it. This score was like a gateway drug to Danny Elfman. This score is how I was able to get my hands on the breakfast theme song for Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This had The Simpsons on it. Danny Elfman is always all over Tim Burton stuff. And maybe, a lot of people have said that his stuff kind of sounds similar as the years have gone on. But back then, Batman... the score was selling like hotcakes too. People couldn't get enough of that ba 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 ba. And I used to have the old Batman shirt. I used to have all these things, man, and now I'm just, I thought about trying to find and order a Batman logo shirt, but I'm like, I think you can let it go. Also in this movie, besides Danny Elfman, it's co-starring, we've got Kim Basinger, or Basinger, however you want to put it, as Vicky Vale. Pretty good casting for Vicky Vale, to be honest with you. Kim Basinger, again, she was an up-and-comer, and she is one of the most, in the 80s and 90s, and she's still stunning today, but back then, young Kim Basinger, it don't get much hotter. And she was good in this movie. She was layered. They gave her something to do. She wasn't just a damsel in distress. She was a reporter who was looking into things. Now, yes, this character has to get involved. It has to be conflict around that. The Joker likes her and all that stuff. that you could say didn't really need to be in the movie, and that they were created kind of as movie plot tropes, that kind of cliche. But I think she's really good here, and again, stunning. Oh my gosh. Robert Wuhl is in this movie. Most of you guys out there that know of this movie that are of a certain age, you know who this is. The rest of you have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. But Robert Wuhl, he's an actor. His most famous thing was being on a show called Arliss on HBO, where I believe he played a sports agent. But he's in this as a guy named Alexander Knox. He's one of the forgettable parts of this movie. You really don't need him in there, but they wanted another reporter that covers the Batman story, the guy that nobody takes seriously. I think they even make a Hulk joke in there somewhere. I don't know if they made the reporter on... I think they might have said the reporter on Incredible Hulk, he's like that guy. Which, again, a 1%er, like most of you guys probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say the Incredible Hulk TV show. Pat Hingle, who played Commissioner Gordon for a really long time, I think through all the 4 Schumacher movies, or the 2 Schumachers and both Tim Burton movies, Pat Hingle played Commissioner Gordon. Now, if I'd have known more about Batman then as I do now, I'd have said, this guy is fucking so miscast. It's not even funny. But they weren't prioritizing Commissioner Gordon in this movie like they have in other stories, and made him more integral to the plot. So all you really needed was a good character actor. And Pat Hingle does a good job, because the focus is, if you try to put too much focus on other characters, you're going to end up with situations like Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, where there's just too many characters and too many arcs going on. So it was fine seeing Pat Hingle just take a backseat to the rest of the story. But he's a good actor. Billy D. Williams was a controversial choice to play Harvey Dent, who would eventually become Two-Face, one of the Batman's rogues gallery. Now, in the end, do I really give a shit? No. I do want to have seen what they were going to do with it. Because Billy D. Williams is a fun actor, and he's fucking Lando Calrissian, so what are you going to do? But after this movie, he's gone. And he doesn't really get much to do here, but it's always fun. I love the line when he's like talking about, we have more important things to worry about than ghouls and goblins. And he's got the stogie in his mouth. Michael Gough, or Go, however you want to say it, I don't know, who played Alfred through all these 4 movies. To be honest with you, every time a movie would come out and he was still in it, that was how I was checking to see if he was still alive. Because he just looked old. But he was also a really good Alfred. Now, he wasn't very physically mobile, like we've seen in a lot of Alfred iterations. Again, kind of like Pat Hingle's Commissioner Gordon, he's just kind of there to, establish the world and the environment and the people that Bruce has around him, and the people that just did populate this world. But he does a really good job, and up until when they killed him in Batman and Robin, which was, he was on his way out as in real life too. I still think that he's the second best Alfred, unfortunately, though, because Michael Caine, you can't really. But we also haven't really seen a quintessential Alfred yet. And I don't count that show Pennyworth. Okay? That's a TV-ish Gotham-style type to me. Alfred. Now, I know it's on Epix and it's not a CW show, but you know what I'm saying. We haven't gotten that guy just yet. Michael Caine started to give us a little bit of background on what he used to be like in The Dark Knight, but unfortunately, we don't get to see any of that. And so again, another side character that, while good, doesn't really get too much to do in any of the things in the series. Although you have to wait till the next movie for Michael Keaton to give him shit about letting Vicky Vale into the Batcave. Coming up next is Jack Palance, who plays Boss Grissom. Jack Palance, who's got one of the greatest voices of all time, who won an Oscar for City Slickers for his portrayal of the character named Curly is great in this. I mean, the whole, I need someone I can trust. Jack, you are my number one. A guy. And Palance just owns this. What is the line? He's like, say this son of a bitch puts a connection between us and Axis Chemicals. What kind of damage are we looking at? Palance is just great because he just has to be the mob villain who gets killed by Nicholson later, and he does a really great job with what he has to do here. And Palance is just a great character actor. And while there's some other people in here, like the one that we should probably mention is Tracy Walter, who plays Bob, the goon. Tracy Walter is a character actor who's been in everything. And it was an odd choice to just have this one guy be the Joker's main goon. But he was working with him before he got dropped into the vat of acid, so hey, loyalty means a lot, right? Maybe he's the guy who got Jack out of the vat of acid. I don't know. But he seems to have Jack Nicholson's Joker's trust. And he, I'm just saying, Tracy Walter, I don't even know, let's look him up here. Tracy Walter, is he still alive? He is still alive. He was born in 47. Yeah, does a really fantastic job. He's been in Repo Man and Conan the Destroyer. I mean, this guy's all over the place. The last thing that his last credit is from 2016. So, 47. Yeah, he's like 60. No, he's 73. So he's a lot of fun, but he's only in this one movie. And then Jerry Hall, who plays Alicia, Jack Nicholson's whole reason for getting in this mess. She unfortunately doesn't get much to do either, but she does set up what causes Jack to become the Joker, which is he's having an affair with her and she's the boss's girlfriend, and she unfortunately lives long enough to see what happens when Jack becomes the Joker and how he treats the girls that he's in love with, and also how he treats them when he falls out of love with them. And it's pretty sad. They don't show what happens to her, but they just say she, tragically, she threw herself out a window. But you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Just great. And I should say, the writing credits, Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron. The screenplay is pretty dope. I do like this screenplay quite a bit. The rest of this movie is filled with just a bunch of people that I have never heard of in my life. But between the sets and the acting and the Batmobile, I mean, holy God. I mean, yes, I know that thing could never be drivable. I mean, they showed it on Drew Carey, right, where they got the Batmobile. You watch that thing drive, that thing is not street legal. It never will be, but it is really, really cool. And again, it's something that Sean Gordon Murphy used way later in Curse of the White Knight to show a little tribute to that old Batman 89 flavor. The Batmobile kept getting upgrades, but I kind of and some people really like the Tumbler, and that's fine. Some people like the ones from Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. But Batman and Batman Returns as the Batmobile that I like the best. It's the closest to the animated series. And I'd even say that the animated series one is a second place to the Batman 89 Batmobile. When they first showed the guns shooting out, the Ace Chemicals, or was it Axis Chemicals? Ajax? Oh my gosh, why can't I remember now? But whatever, I think it's Ace Chemicals. When you're driving into that place and just gunning people down and dropping the bombs and stuff. And yes, unfortunately, I have to reconcile the fact that this Batman sometimes kills or appears to kill people, or at least creates a situation where someone dies and he doesn't help. And so, even though we can argue that whole argument about my Batman doesn't kill, every once in a while, old Bruce takes a life in these movies, and we just kind of have to like. It was a little less forgivable in B versus S, but I think back then, the fact that we just got a workable Batman movie was good enough, and we would have to take some of our, things that we don't particularly care for in it, just to say we got it, it's done. And I mean, for real, this movie was like kind of the only thing that was going at the time, because while people like Corman were making Fantastic Four, or was it Captain America, like these really low budget things, it wasn't until Blade that we got like another, and Spawn, where we were getting comic book movies. And Blade, to me, it's a comic book movie, but it's more like a vampire movie. And those Corman ones like Fantastic Four and Captain America, those kind of movies, those barely see the light of day. So all we really had up until X-Men in like 99 was this series. And God help me, I loved Batman and Robin when it came out, because it was basically what we had. And even though years later I know that it's not fundamentally a good movie, it didn't stop me from seeing any of those movies probably 4, 5, 6 times too. And so this is one of my favorite franchises, because as the first two are like classics, the last two are kind of guilty pleasures. And you kind of get something out of all of them anyway. Whether you're laughing your butt off or you're, completely engrossed in what Michael Keaton is doing, or Christopher Walken as Max Schreck in Batman Returns, the Tim Burton movies are fantastic. The stunt work in this movie is great. Like I said, the model work is great. A lot of stuff, like, this is still before CG really was taking off. I mean, it was starting to get there a little bit. Like movies like Roger Rabbit were still using CG. I mean, that was ink and paint, paper, and props, and practical effects. And so we were still on that cusp of, like, before we started branching off into the uncanny valley of CG in the 90s. And not even uncanny valley, just poor stuff. I mean, you try to watch some of this stuff now and it looks like PlayStation 1 cutscenes. And so this movie has that going for it too. When in doubt, always go practical, it seems like. And especially lately, whenever I see practical effects used in something that could have just went the CG route, they always get a little bit more credit in my books. Now, the ending of this movie, because, if you haven't seen this movie, full spoilers, right? We put it at the beginning, but like, Batman 89 is a movie that I feel like I'm going to spoil no matter what, because it's been 31 years. The end of the movie was where I had a bit of a problem, where it was just they kill the Joker off. It just felt like something that just doesn't happen. And it's still like my kind of bone of contention with this movie, and with a lot of comic book movies, is killing off the villain. They always get caught, they always go to jail, whether it's in Arkham or some other place, and then they get out. That's how you get them back again. I don't know if it was a short-sighted thing, or they just said, well, this version we're only doing, one Joker, and then one, like, you start with the best villain, and after that it kind of started going downhill. Like, you should have ended with the Joker if you were going to kill him off in the only movie that he was in. But how do you not do the Joker if you don't even know if the movie's going to be a success? And holy cow, it's 7:22. All right, so we're going to actually be doing the live stream in about a half an hour. So I got to kind of cut to the chase. But my favorite moments are basically anything where Michael Keaton and Joker are in those scenes. Michael Keaton telling the story of there was this guy, made mistakes, and then he had to stop his lights out. That's one of my favorite scenes. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Is fantastic. Nicholson saying, never rub another man's rhubarb. Anytime that he just cuts away and does the things where he has the punching glove at the end of the gun that hits the TV, or when he poisons everybody with Smilex gas and does the commercials on TV, where the parade where he's giving away money, the museum where he's attacking and driving Vicky Vale crazy, the water in the face. There's so many things that this movie is an undeniable classic. For a lot of us, it hits us right in the feels. It hits us in a nostalgia level. And for me, this just is such an important film that I'm very angry at myself that I don't own a copy of it on Blu-ray still. I keep telling myself that you'll have more time to get it eventually, but who has more, like this in COVID-19ville, we have lots of free time, but apparently I don't have enough free time to order one off of Amazon. Let's see, what else? I remember that we used to watch this movie in high school. I had a business class, and basically the teacher didn't want to teach us, and so I would bring in movies, and I remember there was like at least a good week where we just sat there in the dark watching Batman in like 20-30 minute increments. And I also remember that the class really got into it when Batman was getting his ass handed to him by the the last main goon in the tower, in the clock tower. And all the students were like, "Yeah, whoop that Batman's ass!" And I'm like, "Why are you rooting against Batman?" But it was a different time period. Anyway, that's Batman 1989. I know I didn't go into every single scene or anything like that because you don't really have to. And like I said, the movie lives up here in my brain. And it's just fun talking about it after all these years. And finally talking about it after all these years. And we're going to talk more. We'll have talked more, I'm sure, about it during the live stream that we're going to be doing. But Batman 89 is definitely one of the movies that one of the last movies I want to see before I leave this mortal coil. Because it just doesn't feel like it would be, I feel like full circle by that point. But we never know. So it's time to watch Batman as many times as I can before I go. So anyway, if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. We'll be back next week with Batman Returns. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.